everyone, it's the History Nerd, and we're back with another episode of Ask the History Nerd Anything. So I'm going to start off from the bottom of part 3 of the Ask the History Nerd Anything series, and go from there, going through the channel, seeing if I can answer some of the questions that have been asked that I don't have time to answer in gameplay videos, or that I forget to answer in gameplay videos, or that I forget to leave a comment to in the actual comment section, or perhaps a question that I haven't answered to the best of my abilities or I'd like to expand on further. Anyway, getting on, Comrade Dan asks, if toast lands butter side down and cats always land on their feet, what happens if you strap toast to the back of a cat and drop it? I can tell you, after numerous highly scientific experiments involving my cat and about 3 loaves of bread, it's going to be about 50-50 whether it lands with the cat feet down or the bread. Now, granted, my cat is kind of fat and lazy, so that might be playing into why it's 50-50 and not 100% in favor of the cat. Also, if you attach too many pieces of bread to the cat when you drop it, the cat is going to get confused and angry and throw at least one of these pieces of toast off of it, causing an incorrect result, because, you know, obviously we're not talking about any cat interference into this experiment. What I can say is that I will continue to conduct these experiments on my free time, and I will see if I can come up with any definitive result right now other than 50-50 cat toast equation. So, yes, I will get back to you with more scientific knowledge. Alright. Matt, I'm pretty sure you are not well versed on the subject, past videos, but do you have any book recommendations on medieval Asia? Timurids, Kazım Khanate, etc. And I was also wondering what you thought about the recent events in Egypt, and what you thought about the whole situation in North Africa. You are quite correct, I don't have any books to recommend on that geographic area for that time period. I'm terribly sorry, but that is massively in my ignorance zone, so I don't know. So yeah, apologies on that. Wondering about the events in Egypt and the whole situation in North Africa. I think it's a very interesting situation that's going on in North Africa right now. I think we're seeing the starting of individual people getting more and more involved in the political process in the region. Having said that, it's going to take a very long time for that region to become politically stable in the Western sense. What I notice particularly in Egypt that's going on with all the protests that occur in Tahrir Square is getting rid of Mubarak taught the Egyptian people that holding mass political rallies in public places and basically going into revolt is a good way to get rid of leaders who you don't like that are in power. The unfortunate side effect to learning this lesson is that now the political process in Egypt is going to be dominated by these public displays of outrage if political decisions are made against the wishes of a certain group of people. Now, the tricky thing with that is that it's politics. You can't please everybody all of the time. So, no matter what happens in this region, there's going to be people who are pissed off. And the way political change is occurring in Egypt over the past few years is, if you don't like the way political change, the politics of the country are going, get up in arms about it. So it's going to be a long time before we see a stabilized Egypt, and it's going to be a long time before we see a stabilized North Africa. To add to that is the instability going on in the Near Eastern Middle East, right? So the Anatolia region, well, not really Anatolia, because Turkey seems to be doing okay. But the Levant and the quote-unquote Holy Land, and further east, with obviously the big ones, Iran, the political situation in that area directly influences the political situation in North Africa. And I think that's going to add even more fuel to the fire of instability in the region. And yeah, it's interesting to see. It's concerning, to say the least. I mean, it's good that people are getting active and getting involved in the political process. I think that's absolutely necessary. But, and here's the big but, is how they do it. And, I mean, all you have to do is take a look at France post-revolution to realize that, a culture of political revolution, like what is developing in Egypt, it's very dangerous and it's very unstable, and it takes time to bring stability to a political to a region. It takes time to bring political stability to a region that is embracing wholeheartedly the violent revolutionary ideals of changing their political process. So it's interesting, it's exciting, but I'm very glad I don't live there. And I really truly hope that things can calm down in the region, and that people can continue to be actively involved in the political process, but without having to revolt to become involved in it. So yeah, there's my thoughts on Egypt. Blowfly. So what about the Pope and his resignation? 700 years since that happened. There's some historical stuff Saw a couple of documentaries about the Great Schism of the Church. There's interesting and head-shaking stuff there. Couldn't agree more. The Great Schism, if we're talking about the same one in 1054 between the Catholics and the Orthodox faith, I was absolutely fascinated by that, taking my Christianity Religious Studies course, which was interesting. And much to the chagrin of my Mennonite professor, I focused a bit too much on Orthodox, and in particular, the Byzantine Orthodox. I was focused far too much on the history and not enough about the theology, apparently. But hey, I'm a history nerd, so that's to be expected. The Pope and his resignation. I think it's incredibly interesting that we're seeing this kind of thing coming out of the Catholic Church, especially hot on the heels of the abdication of Queen Beatrice, I believe, in the Netherlands. Let me Google that to make sure I got the name right. Bear with me a moment. So yes, Queen Beatrix, to abdicate in favor of her son. So I hope my little Avast pop-up didn't sound there. That would be annoying. Following fresh on the heels of that, I think it's a development and a change in very old institutions coming into the 21st century. For example, I wouldn't be surprised to see that Queen Elizabeth II is the last monarch in Great Britain who dies on the throne. Because I don't think she's going to abdicate in favor of Charles. I think she realizes what that would do. But I also think that it's a development and a change in these age-old institutions that we have, and it wouldn't surprise me if things like this continued. Honestly, it wouldn't surprise me if there were term limits assigned to the next pope. Also, as a Canadian, I'm kind of excited that a Canadian is in the running for pope. He's French-Canadian, I do believe, so that's even more exciting, because now the rest of the world can see the hardcore religious French-Canadian, which is exciting for the rest of from a Canadian's perspective, that's exciting to share with the rest of the world. But yeah, I think it's a sign of these old institutions of ours that are needing to be updated because of new thinking, really, new social thinking, new and more people questioning the idea of unquestioned absolute rule for ever, basically. That and I mean, you know, if you think about it, right? Like the Pope was old Benedict there. I mean, he was getting up there. Do you really want to be doing that in your old age? You know, I think you know, old monarchs and old popes, they just want to retire and ride out into the sunset. I think everybody hits a certain age in their life when they're just like, you know what? I want to sit by the lake and just relax and maybe yell at kids on the lawn. Everybody wants to do that eventually. And I mean, it's different timing for different people, but eventually everybody's just like, you know what? Screw this. I've seen enough of the world. I just want chill. And if you're running it's not the largest faith in the world, but if you're running the Catholic Church, that's kind of a big job, you know. It wouldn't surprise me if Benedict was just like, oh, I've had it with this, and with all the medical problems he was going through, totally understandable. At least from my thinking, anyway. And now the Great Schism, to get onto a completely different historical topic. Absolutely fascinating period of time. If you don't know anything about the Great Schism, please, please, please find documentaries. I wish I could remember some of the books that I read. Unfortunately, they were all taken out of the library at my university. I'll see if I can rack my brain and come up with some titles. But it's a very, very, very interesting time where you've got the Pope in Rome. So, painting the historical picture, at this time, there's no difference in Christian faith, right? So today we've got, you know, the Catholics and the Orthodox, and we've got Reformed and Protestants and Anglicans and Methodists and Evangelicals, and I mean the list goes on and on and on and on and on. You know, 1,000 years ago, well, 1,000 years ago, it's not the year 2200. 1,000 years ago, it wasn't like that. There was just Christianity, and it was one all-encompassing belief. You know, that's not to say that there weren't different theories about it. At the Council of Nicaea in 325, where the books of the Bible were decided upon, and other books were basically burnt for all of time, you had different groups coming in and trying to influence what was going to be considered Christian theology with what they considered to be the Christian theology. And I can't remember if it was before or after the Great Schism, but there were also, you know, monks and bishops in Ireland who had a little bit of a different take on some of the Christian beliefs. And I mean, there could have been a chance of a Great Schism occurring in the British Isles with a sort of Celtic Christian hybrid, but that never came to pass. Mainly because at this time the Roman Empire had collapsed, obviously, and so you had a bunch of regional kingdoms and dukedoms and what have you, but the church was still run from Rome. The church was still using the same institutions it had during the Roman Empire, and it was a very, very, very powerful body. So powerful, in fact, that the only effective opposition that could come up to it until much later on in history was, unsurprisingly, the Roman Emperor. So in Rome you had the Pope, and he was the head of Christian theology. Kind of. Because in Constantinople, the imperial capital, you also had the Patriarch of Constantinople, who was the head religious figure there. And you had this conflict between the Pope in Rome and the Patriarch in Constantinople. And through a series of incredibly unfortunate events, these two couldn't see eye to eye. And through a number of diplomatic failings, and I mean, this is what absolutely fascinated me about this event, is that it was based on theology, obviously, because it's a split between believers of the same church, but it was highly political. And the blunders and just the series of events that occurred in this really show. And I feel like I should pull it up in Google here just so I can kind of go through the events. I'll see if I can do this. And again, if you're hearing that threat has been detected, I do apologize. Apparently Avast isn't appreciative of my browser at the moment. Okay, so let's see if we can find the Great Schism here. Okay, so this is just on Wikipedia. I'm just reading from there. But I'll try to interject with anything that I can remember and include that as it comes to my brain. So, in 1054, Pope Leo IX sent a letter to Michael Surelius, I do believe is how you pronounce that name, Patriarch of Constantinople, that cited a large portion of the forgery called the donation of Constantine, believing it to be genuine. Leo IX assured the Patriarch that the donation was completely genuine. The Patriarch rejected the claims of the papal primacy. So, let's take a look at what the donation of Constantine actually was, at least in the thought, or in the head of the Pope at this time. The donation of Constantine, actually, is a forged Roman imperial decree by which the Emperor Constantine I supposedly transferred authority over Rome and the western part of the Roman Empire to the Pope. So we can see right away how important this donation of Constantine is. In a land where there's only the Eastern Empire and the Eastern Emperor, and where the West has fallen, and the only thing left, the last remnant of the Roman Empire, is the Pope, on really all matters, not just of theology, but in all matters, what Leo IX was trying to do was send a message to the East that says, look, I'm the big dick in town, you all have to listen to me. But, I mean, this first off, it wasn't even a real thing. This was a forged document made in roughly the 8th century. But, I mean, it was just Leo IX making a power grab. So moving on to the next paragraph in the Wikipedia article. The Pope sent legates to Constantinople in 1054 to settle the dispute. They met with a hostile reception. The legates departed abruptly, leaving a message from the Pope with the Patriarch. The Patriarch thereafter refused to recognize their status as legates. When Pope Leo died on the 19th of April 1054, the legates' authority perhaps legally ceased, but they effectively ignored this technicality. In response, the legates entered the Church of the Hagia Sophia during the Divine Liturgy and deposited a bill of excommunication on the altar. The year 1054 is now used to date the schism. So, because the Emperor and the Patriarch were like, okay, you know what, Leo IX, this is bullshit. You're coming here and you're saying that you own the western half of the empire and all things to do with the theology behind that. We don't agree, so stuff it. And I mean, obviously, at this time, it wasn't the Emperor and the Patriarch talking to the Pope. They were doing this through channels, so these legates who were there, who lost their authority because there's a new Pope, so they don't have any authority. And instead of just, turning tail and going back to Rome and thinking, well, there's a better way, we can work on this some other way, they decided to say, screw it. Let's just excommunicate literally everyone in the East. What could possibly go wrong? So, what could the Emperor and the Patriarch do except quite geniusly excommunicate everyone in the West. So, this was the whole idea of excommunication was a bit more of a bigger thing in the West. Again, because there was no political institution; it was just the church. If you got excommunicated from the church, you were cut off from everything that tied the West together. In the East, okay, it wasn't a big event for them. The head bishop, which is all the Pope was at this time. So the head bishop in Rome says you're out of the church. To the emperor of not just Constantinople, but of the Eastern Roman Empire, to the patriarch of the emperor. No. That doesn't matter. So, and I mean, this was what 50 years, give or take, before the First Crusade. So before the First Crusade, 50 years before the First Crusade, they're very, well, maybe not very, but there is an outside chance that this could have led to a war between East and West. Obviously, afterwards, they put aside their differences and tried to work mostly together, usually. I mean, of course, there were stories during the First Crusades of Western armies riding into Constantinople and being shocked and appalled at the Orthodox priests, the way they dressed, the way they conducted their services. One of the things that I really liked, and is like, if I ever have to join a religion, it puts a little point in the Orthodox faith. In the West, when you take communion in a Catholic ceremony, you take the little wafer, and there you go. In the East, apparently, in the Orthodox faith, they use buns. So it's like you get a little loaf of bread and a little drink of wine. That right there is better than just a little wafer. So yeah, and that was one thing that I remember reading in a primary source of Crusader armies going into Constantinople and discovering that, well, what's this craziness with the bread? Anyway, that was a bit of a tangent. How am I doing for time? 22 minutes, that's fine. Okay, IELTS's request for Sokoto in Victoria. Let me tell you, I was fascinated by your request, and I'm like, well, you know what? If there is no Sokoto Let's Play, I wonder why. So I decided to load up the game, and I don't think it would be as interesting as you think it would be. In about an hour and a half of gameplay, just testing it out, I really wasn't able to do much. The problem with Sokoto is it's in the middle of Africa without a port. So right away, you can't really secure a port, and you know that by the time you're actually able to, it's all going to be colonized by Western countries anyway, and you won't be able to conquer them. So that's kind of a letdown. 2, obviously, is that you're an uncivilized nation, so that you need to westernize, which takes forever to get the research points necessary to invest into the westernizing mechanics that they have instituted. And thirdly, the economy sucks. So I fear a Let's Play of Sokoto would be cuts of me clicking on what we're doing to westernize, and that's pretty much it for the first few episodes. It wouldn't be very exciting, and I think that's why nobody's done a Let's Play of it, because I don't know, I can't think of a way. I mean, not that my Let's Plays are exciting or anything like that, but there's just literally nothing to do with them. Absolutely nothing to do with Sokoto for the first 40, 50 years, if not more, of game time. I just don't think that is something that anybody wants to see. I could be totally wrong. And if I am wrong, please, as always, let me know. But I really don't know if that would be entertaining for anybody to watch. So yeah, that's why It hasn't gone up on the channel. That's why I'm not going to do one, probably, because I just really don't think it's going to be all that entertaining. Alright, so that takes care of the questions asked in part 3. Let's move on to any questions in my videos that I haven't actually been able to answer. Of course, other than comments about my playstyle, because if I'm going to answer it, I'll answer it in the comments section, I guess. Okay, now, we're moving into the end of my 1000-Year Reich Austria videos, and though that I was sad that ended the way it was, or the way that it did. And yeah, Hector, I'm not going to try it on easy. I don't need to try it on easy. It was poor choices that I made during the game, i.e. leaving the Holy Roman Empire to fight an independence war while the Golden Horde was on my borders. And after that, there was just really not much I could think to do to bring back the Austro-Bavarian kingdom. So yeah, I don't think I need to play it on easy. I've played all Paradox games on normal forever, and the only games that kick my ass are Hearts of Iron. So I think the difficulty level's fine. I'm just convinced I made poor choices, which I do. And changing the difficulty to easy isn't going to change that. Guaranteed. So, yeah. What I am going to do with Crusader Kings 2, though, off on a tangent, is around Q2, I do believe, is the release for the Old Gods. So that starts in the 800s. It's going to be a British Isles or Scandinavian. I haven't made my mind up on that one yet, and I think I'm not going to make my mind up until I'm actually able to play the new release. So, yeah, that's kind of the idea I've got for that. I think that's going to be the most interesting, especially with the mechanics that they're building into it. And with all the changes that are going in to Victoria 2, with that new expansion pack, Heart of Darkness, I believe is what it's called, with the Crisis stuff, I talked that up, I think, in my last Austria video, more specifically, my last Europa Universalis 3 video. That system sounds exciting. And with EU4 coming out, which also sounds exciting, I definitely want to do a grand campaign, but I want to make sure that I'm able to survive Crusader Kings 2 with the stupid Golden Horde that comes along. So, hopefully nothing. When the Old Gods expansion comes out, I'm going to start another grand campaign that will hopefully make it to a second and afterwards third game. Now, there are rumors that EU4 will have a save game converter, which will save me a ton of pain, and just make it easier. So, yay! That's exciting! So look forward to that in a couple of months, and yeah, that should be some good times. So, yep, there's an update on the CK2 situation, Roloing. Man, this is great, isn't it? Just dead air on an Ask Me Anything video. Absolutely wonderful. Okay, and yeah, Matt, Castile or Hispania, that is another region that I could give a try, but just for purely my own purposes, I'm thinking the north. And I don't know why. I've honestly never given the Iberian Peninsula a try in Crusader Kings 2, so I should probably try that first before I just dismiss it and be like, no, I know better. And Blowfly, I do have to say, I laughed my ass off when I read your little comment, pissed off about the South Germans claiming to be German. Loved it. Made my day when I read that. Going out here, Adam Perez. If I may ask, why is Austria your favorite country ever? Now, I think I attempted to answer this, but it was during gameplay. So there's a potential that my answer became a meandering, wandering rant that didn't make any sense. Because that tends to happen. There's a chance that this is just going to turn into a long, meandering rant that doesn't make any sense. Strap in for another one, guys. How much time have I already? 30 minutes! Half an hour of me ranting and raving. Okay. Then, why is Austria my favorite country in all of history? It stems from Europa Universalis 2, which is a strange place for it to stem from. But I remember picking up that game on discount ages ago, and loading it up, playing it for the first time, and I wasn't well versed. I was pretty young when I got this. I wasn't well versed in history at that time. You know, I knew a lot about the world wars, and that was about it. And so I loaded it up. I loaded up England, and I was like, screw this. Why am I at war with France? Why do I have Calais? What's going on? This is crazy. And gave up on it. And then about a year or two later, I came back to it, and I was just like, okay, well, you know what? Let's just start picking random countries and seeing what happens. And I think I wound up picking the Teutonic Order, or maybe it was Prussia back then. I'm not sure which one it was. But playing through that and noticing how good of a job Austria does in that game, because that game kind of favored Austria a little bit. And so then the next game I played, which I ended that Prussian Teutonic Order game, whichever it was, fairly quickly, and just loaded up an Austria game, and absolutely fell in love with the power of that nation, and just the events that made you a crazy powerhouse. Like, just insanity ensued. And that was cool for me. I really liked that, but I never really bothered to look into the history of Austria, despite using the history of Austria to my advantage for kicking ass in video games. And then it wasn't until I got into university where I started taking classes in other historical eras than just basically the 19th century, which was really 19th and 20th century was what I was interested in as a young one. And I took a summer class called the Habsburgs, and that was one of my most favorite classes I've ever taken, with some of the most interesting subject matter that I've ever thrown myself into. The luck, the political ability, the diplomatic ability. The Habsburgs were a crazy, unique historical phenomenon that I don't really think we'll see again, at least not for a very, very long time. Here was a family that stayed in power over the same geographical region and was able to expand this geographical region for 600-ish years? Mind explosion. How were they able to do that? Especially leading into, the 19th and 20th centuries. How was one ruling family able to ride it out through the French Revolution, and then the revolutions of 1848, and then the rising nationalisms, the rising feeling of nationalism that rose up in Europe throughout the latter half of the 19th century and into the 20th. How did it pull this off? And just finding out and discovering what it was that the Habsburgs were able to do, and do very well. It was fascinating. Really, when I look at the Austro-Hungarian Empire, it seems to me more like a 20th century nation state than a kingdom or anything like that. I mean, you have this region where once it got big enough, you have Austria, which is very small, ruling over Hungary, which is big, Bohemia, which is big, and then, chunks of Poland, the Balkans. Like, it's madness. And the concessions that the Habsburgs made. I mean, looking back on it now from a 21st century perspective, you look at it and you're like, well, they were still oppressive dicks who were horrible rulers. But compare them to the rulers around them, and they weren't. Like, they did a good job. And that's what absolutely fascinates me the most about the Habsburgs in Austria, is that they did a good job of ruling a multinational kingdom for 600 years. Like, absolutely mind-blowing. And so this is why they're my favorite country, and it's also why, stemming from my connection with EU3, it's also why they're my favorite for grand strategy games. Because I guess in the back of my head, there's a little voice that's like, they're just going to do well. They're going to do well. They're just going to do well. And, they didn't in Crusader Kings 2. They did great in Civ. So 50-50, right? Europa Universalis 3 seems to be going well. So that's good. So, what else have we got here? I'm going to be ending this up pretty quickly. Blowfly, absolutely amazing insight for me into Germany. I always, after I took a nationalism course, and it was a fourth year level course where we were to pick a country in Europe, or, well, to pick a country anywhere, and go into detail on the rise of nationalism through through different means. One of the guys in my class did the rise of nationalism in the UK as it relates to football or soccer, for my North American viewers who wouldn't know that soccer is football over there. I don't know if there's any of you out there, but I got to make that distinction. Yeah, so I picked Germany, and I learned a lot about German nationalism. And I remember reading after 1871. So by this time, Germany had been unified into a grand empire, led, from Berlin, and it was, there were systems of Prussification going on to make the empire Prussian, because the Prussians were strong and meticulous, and they'd conquer people. And anyway, one of the regions that really didn't take to this Prussification was Bavaria. And I remember reading about the German educational system in the early 20th century. It may have been late 19th, early 20th century, probably, where you're getting these lessons on German history, and part of the Prussification program was to teach about the Prussian kings. And the Bavarian education system was like, screw that. We're learning about our kings, and just the differences between all the little German states within this empire. And even then, it really did seem like there wasn't a sense of a German nation. It was a German union. And through my research and reading up on it, it seemed to me anyway that the real rise of an idea not of German patriotism, because the German Empire was a big thing, and there were patriots of the German Empire in 1914 when the Second Reich went to war. And I mean, but it's interesting, right? Because it really was more of a union, because you had regiments separated based on their countries. You had the people in there who identified themselves as Bavarians or as Saxons, or, all the different German states, that's what the people identified with. They were part of the German Empire, yes, and they were German, absolutely, but deep down to the core, they were from what state they were from. And it wasn't until the sort of ultra-nationalist sentiment out of the Nazi movement where we start to see, the average German thinking, hey, you know what, I'm German. I'm not a Saxon or a Bavarian or a Prussian or what have you. I'm German first. And so that was an interesting thing that I took from it. And what I'm absolutely fascinated by is that when you take away the heavy-handed fascist approach of nationalism, which is key to a fascist government, you need to inspire absolute, devotion and love and all these feelings for your nation. You pull that away, and lo and behold, maybe the idea of a German nation, the way I think of it, is still not exactly the way that Germany should be approaching the idea of nation. Now, I don't know how viable a fractured Germany would be. I don't know how many German states could, quote unquote, hold their own in the European Union. But it's interesting that, like you say, our Bavaria is like Texas, always want to break free of the Union. Looking at their history, that makes a hell of a lot of sense. And I don't know why I never thought of it like that. But that's interesting. I really appreciate getting that insight. I mean, even like this example you list here, most recent differences were in the education legislations. In the past years, we've finally come to an agreement that made all school diplomas accepted in all states. In the past years? Like, how many past years are we talking here, Blowfly? Are we talking like a couple of decades, or are we talking a couple of years? Because that is insane. So that's like if you got, well, I'll pick on them because I saw news today about the high schools in New York. And 80% of high school students in New York need to go back to learn how to read and write. Apparently, maybe there was a bit of hyperbole in that article, but that would be like getting a high school diploma in New York, going to California, and then they look at you and they say, "Well, you haven't graduated high school." That's mind-blowingly insane for a country. Anyway, I think this video is starting to get far too off topic. I'm gonna try and finish up the questions on this video. Mr. Breakthrough X, yes, I have read the history of Austria, and yeah, I think I've covered it, but it's damn amazing. And yes, we don't cover German history in Canada. What we do cover is French history and Native history, and then a little bit of British history, mainly pertaining to colonization, and then World War I. Seriously, we covered a little bit of the French Revolution in high school social studies, which is our equivalent of history, and that's pretty much it. We didn't really cover Napoleon. Like I say, I never learned about the revolutions of Europe in 1848 until I went to university. We never covered anything about Rome. We didn't do anything on the Crusades. We didn't do anything on the Reformation. We didn't do anything on the Enlightenment. Or the Renaissance. It's crazy, but basically for us, yeah, it was learning about the natives before we got here, the French before we encouraged them to join, and then it was a little bit of British colonization, Canada. That's it. So that's depressing. For someone who's a fan of European history, that was depressing for me. Anyway, on that sad note, yeah, I think I'm going to leave it there, because I think I've got now all caught up with questions. If I haven't, please leave it in the comments for this video. And I hate to ask you to post again, or possibly for a third time, but it'll just be easier for me when I go to do these videos to go back and answer them this way. So, yeah. Thumbs up if you've enjoyed this video. Please leave comments, questions, concerns, whatever you want to write to me, leave it below in this video, and with the next time I do one of these, I will answer it. So, thank you all very, very, very much from the bottom of my heart. Thank you all for watching, and we'll see you next time.